So hello, we are here at the National Disaster Resilience Conference, and I'm Cary, the Fortified, sorry about that, I'm forgetting my title, I don't know today. This has been an amazing conference. I'm the Market Development Manager for the Fortified program, and I have with me today Chandra from Womack, and I'm going to let her tell you a little bit more about herself. She wears many hats.
I do. I wear a lot of hats. I'm Chandra from Womack. I'm a windstorm and structural engineer with Aran and Franklin Engineering. We have 4 offices. 3 of them are in Texas, and 1 is in Florida. We do windstorm and structural design all along the coast. I'm also on the Smart Home America Board of Directors with Alex.
Too many boards.
And I'm also on the Texas Windstorm Insurance Association Board of Directors. So I wear a lot of hats.
And a Fortified Evaluator.
And I'm a Fortified Evaluator. And I'm on the Flash Technical Advisory Committee. So yes, I am in the resilience world. I'm in the design world. So
well, and that's one of the reasons we want to talk to you today, because you have so many perspectives and come at this from so many angles, and I think which is great. And so we just want to hear more about your perspective on all of this. So what do you think about the conference? Speaking of the conference, it's been amazing from my perspective, I know.
I keep sending myself messages on things that I need to remember to do later, because it's so amazing when you get all these different people, from academics to product suppliers to designers, code officials, emergency management, are all in the same room together. And the ideas that are coming out of this conference for future resiliency is tremendous. I'm so excited.
And Jim Cantori from the weather.
He's coming up tomorrow. He's tomorrow. So we're safe.
Thankfully, there's no storms coming at us.
As long as we keep him off the beach, I think we'll be okay.
So anyhow, that's it's been great, and we've had some really good positive feedback around the Fortified, and that seems to be a resounding theme.
Well, Fortified is the standard, right? It's the standard that everybody's trying to build to right now for resiliency, and it's amazing because it takes what we're doing in Texas right now with the windstorm code and just making it that much better. And it's very small things that you have to do in order to get to that standard. So it speaks for itself.
Yeah. So shifting gears a little bit, and this hurricane season, while it didn't seem, if you weren't in the path of a storm, it didn't seem that bad because we didn't have as many landfall hurricanes, but it was historically a pretty bad season. So this season and last season, we have had some landfalls. What is your take, and what are you thinking as these things are happening every year?
There's just a tremendous amount of climate change. There's a lot of activity as the Earth goes through cycles. You have hot and cold, and you have the El Nino and the La Nina, and it causes a lot of different activity in the oceans, and it's going to cause a lot of these storms. We've seen historical storms in Hawaii. I mean, they had a 180 mile unprecedented.
Yeah.
So they're all over the globe. It's definitely something that we can't ignore. It's something that we're going to have to prepare for and make sure that everything that we're putting in place, as far as not only structures but also infrastructure, and that we're putting buildings in the right places to be able to withstand these things as time goes on. Everybody wants to live at the coast, at the beach. It's beautiful. You have that view. It's fantastic. But the reality is that comes with a lot of hazards.
Yeah, it's a dangerous place to be.
Yes.
In a lot of cases. And we had, this year, I think the biggest headline as far as the hurricane season was Ida, for sure.
Yes.
Hitting Louisiana, and we were down, went down there with Smart Home, and we saw Grand Isle and Homa, and Grand Isle was just, the word on the street was that it was flattened. It wasn't flattened. We actually had a number of both code-built homes that were built some more modern codes that did very well, and the fortified homes that were unscathed. So it was like it was sort of proof point,
And that's the thing. It's like when you actually do design work, and then the only time you really know if it's gonna work is when it goes through a storm, and you go, okay, yeah, it worked. It did exactly what I thought it was going to do, and there were no variables that I didn't account for. It was great,
Well, and we know Fortified works, but when those storms are bearing down and we have Fortified homes in the path, you can't help but just wait and see what happens.
Exactly.
But we know, and it keeps being proven again and again that they're doing great. And in one spot in particular, in Louisiana, and I don't know if you've been over there at all, but we had a multifamily structure that was in the path. It was about 90% complete. was funded through the state, some state and federal money. And that was unscathed, and about less than half a mile away we had one that was just absolutely devastated. Like, families are displaced from that one, so it's just.
And think of how much of an impact that's going to have on a community
That's
with
right.
all those families displaced.
That's right.
Not only do you have to find some place to relocate them with temporary housing, which was another amazing thing they talked about today, but you know, to put somebody with temporary housing, but then you have to figure out how you're going to rebuild that, and do you rebuild in the same place, and is it still affordable at that point? So there's a lot of things.
That's right. So certainly we just talked about IDA and all the, a lot of lessons learned, a lot of proof that Fortified's working, resilience is working. You're living in Texas, and you've been there a long time, and you've experienced storms like Ike that devastated Galveston and Boulevard Peninsula, and more recently Harvey. That was a big flood event when it came to the news. But a lot of people don't know that the Rockport area and the Coastal Bend area were absolutely, severely affected.
Severely affected, and that's a very seasonal touristy area, and so it's a lot of service-based jobs. Right. And so when you have all of that affordable housing taken away from people that are trying to serve that community, they go away, and then there's nobody to support the tourism industry. So then that whole area just dies, and so. It's really important that we keep that in mind as we're building and as we're planning and as we're developing infrastructure to make sure those things are accounted for, so that long term our communities stay whole and together. Because I'm a windstorm engineer. I build one house at a time. I don't build houses. I design one house at a time. And we design a lot of program work, and we do a lot of disaster recovery work. But I don't want to do that kind of work. I want to build it right the first time, and then have my houses there through all the storms. Keep those families in their homes. That's what I want to do. I want to see my impact to be long term, well beyond my lifetime. Sure. That's what I want to see, and that's what I want to see for resiliency too.
Yeah, and you mentioned the workforce housing and the service, the service folks that are doing all those service jobs in those communities, which really are the lifeblood, right? They keep things moving. And earlier today, I was fortunate to be on a panel with SBP, who's doing a phenomenal job, who started in New Orleans after Katrina and has done incredible things since then, all over the country after disasters. And they've now incorporated Fortified and the New Orleans Redevelopment Authority, who's also implemented Fortified and is requiring of their projects in the city of New Orleans.
And that's what it's going to take, Alex. It's going to take somebody saying it's going to be the standard.
We know how to stop this from happening.
We know how. How do you not know living in New Orleans? How do you not know living on the Gulf Coast that this is not going to happen again? It's going to happen again. So let's just be prepared. Let's do the right things now. Put that extra, that little bit extra that you need into those structures to make them fortified, to reduce those losses and keep those families in their homes. That's
right. And we're talking a lot of new construction, but it's really important for people to know that it can absolutely be done to existing homes as well. And the prime time to do that is re-roofing. And unfortunately, a lot of people, the only time they get to do that is after a disaster when they've lost their roof, and now they're able to re-roof to fortify. But for anybody out there that that wants to make their home more resilient, that is the first place to start.
The roof is the biggest loss leader when it comes to damages, because you've got the shingles that come off, you have all that rain pour into the house, and not only are you getting water in your home, your sheetrocks, you've got contents damage, everything is affected. And so if you can just keep the water out, you may not have electricity, but you will have a roof over your head, and as soon as the electricity comes back on, you're dry and you're safe, and you can go back to your life in your community, helping others rebuild.
Yeah, we saw that a lot after Sally, where homeowners. I think people don't think it'll happen to them, and don't quite understand that if they lose their roof, they're going to lose a lot more than just their roof, because a lot of water's going to come in.
Think of all the precious things that you have that you just can't replace. Yeah. And that's what happens. You lose all. It's just as bad as a fire or a flood or any other disaster.
Absolutely, and it can happen to anybody. I mean, we've seen that, and we're seeing it more and more over the country, not just in coastal areas. We're seeing this happen in tornadoes and high winds and derecho.
And one of the things people don't realize is how many tornadoes respond from hurricanes.
That's right.
They don't think about it. They think, oh, that's in Tornado Alley or that's Oklahoma. That is not. It is in Texas. It is in Florida. It is anywhere that there's a hurricane. The because those hurricanes will spawn tornadoes, and it's very localized, and people don't really plan for that larger event because they're not as prevalent as in those other areas, but they definitely happen.
Yeah, and that was actually some of the things that struck me from the conference, is listening to a lot of these weather guys that are talking about storms and how, you know, no storm is the same, and just and this concept of it's just a Cat 1, you know, for those of us that are in hurricane prone areas, just a Cat 1. I mean, I've probably said it myself.
Just a Cat 2,
right,
and in reality, it had 16-foot storm surge, and
that's right.
You know, which was the most devastating part of the whole storm.
Yeah,
so.
it's important to be prepared and to do everything we can.
That's right. You need to be prepared for all the hazards that could affect your home.
That's right. So you've been in this business a long time, and you've seen a lot of changes over the years. So you know, tell me about some of the changes you've seen in resilience since you first started. And
so, really, I mean, my dad was in this before me, and so you know, I've been in it indirectly or directly for a long time. When he started, all the construction was, you know, there was no code, and then there was a baby building code, you know, so that they adopted this little kind of.
I've quite heard that term before, but that's great.
Baby building code. It was a supplemental, or you know, it was some guidance basically. Yeah. But now they have, you know, the IRC and IBC codes. They have TDI, if you're building along the coast, requires that you build to that minimum code. And Texas doesn't have a building code. Yeah. I mean, I was looking at one of the charts yesterday, and Texas is this big white blob in the middle of all these states that have a statewide building code, and we have no building code. And it's individual cities or counties may have it, but the state does not. So when you can't regulate any kind of standards, every municipality gets to make their own choice about what they want to adopt. But fortunately, along the coast, TDI has adopted the 2018 IBC building code, which is one of the more current codes, and we have followed the wind flow provisions of that, and that's the ASCE 716, which is the current adopted ASCE code. So we're doing the most up-to-date current things. But still, there's more. We can still do more.
Yeah, there's always more, and there's many states, and I think that, you know, there's so many safety measures in place with so many other pieces of our lives, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that a lot of homeowners don't know that they may not have a code in their state, and it varies so much per jurisdiction.
Absolutely.
A lot of the bigger cities do, and that's
you can be 10 miles apart and have completely different building codes, and you think, oh, I'm building just like my cousin Bob down the road, and it's nothing like cousin Bob's, because the builders are only going to build to what they have to build to, because they don't want to put any additional time, money, effort into making it more than what's absolutely required, because it cuts into their profit margins. Yeah. They don't want to do that.
Well, and there's definitely builders that do a great job, but you know, those are not. There's also those that are, you know, not licensed and, you know, have their truck in their ladder, and out they go and build a house. And I
call
think
that chuck in the truck. Yeah.
Chuck in the truck.
Yes, he doesn't have anything but his. And there are a lot of great builders that work out of their trucks. I'm not saying that.
No.
But a lot of it, and then after storms, there's a lot of these guys that come from all over the place and don't even know what kind of code they're supposed to.
That's a serious problem, and yeah, homeowners should always be checking their references for sure, and not just taking the guy that flew in from Minnesota or something and is trying to build a hurricane. In a hurricane resistant house. So talk to me about, you mentioned TDI and Texas Windstorm and things that are happening there, and how well, at least in the coastal areas with the TDI codes, or the TDI, what they're requiring, that helps the windstorm that you're on the board of. It helps protect their customers better. It allows them to have that insurance. With that, and in your position there in Tweet, what are things that you would like to see in the future?
I mean, the good thing is I'm in a position where I can give some input on those things. I can talk to TDI, and I talk to the TDI Windstorm manager frequently. We email, and so when he has, there's always things that are changing, whether it's products or whether it's methodologies or types of construction, and we'll talk about what's the best way to handle this. And he and I've had conversations about, could we recommend this getting into the code? I mean, could we recommend this to the commissioner? And because what that would do would, as a windstorm engineer, that would bring everybody up to a higher code, and then everything along the coast would be built to this higher code. And they're hesitant, I think, to adopt it because they don't want to put any additional financial burden on people,
sure.
which I understand.
Sure.
But the flip side is that it's going to take somebody like insurance companies pushing to make this happen because they're paying losses on the fact that they don't have properties that can withstand these storms.
Sure.
So, and on the TWIA side, TWIA basically insures policies that TDI recommends for insurability. And so all that's going to do is reduce the TWIA book risk. Their book of business will get stronger because they'll have better codes in place. Well, even the codes we have now are better than the codes we had 30 years ago.
Sure.
So as we go on, it'll be, it'll only get better, and the book of business will only get better.
Excellent. Well, I know that we're getting short on time. Is there anything else that you'd like to, mention before we sign off and about Fortified, about Resilient Conference?
Well, I mean, I think Fortified is a fantastic program. Obviously, I mean, I'm an evaluator. I've been doing Fortified before there was even Fortified Home. We did Fortified for Safer Living, which was the Fortified code before Fortified Home, and I just love the Fortified methodology. I think it just makes a lot of sense, and I think if you can expose people to that, I feel like they will embrace it and want that for themselves, because it's exciting when you think I can have my home and not be in the same situation that people were in after Ike and after Harvey. So
sure,
that's
well, right now it's a volunteer program that anybody can participate
Absolutely.
in, and we have some really great builders.
And I've seen a huge uptake since in the last 4 years. Huge uptake.
Yeah, and we've seen some builders be very successful at selling it and building it, and so it's exciting. It's growing, but thank you so much for being here today.
I'm really excited.
Thank you all for joining us. And we'll, if you want to learn any more, we do have a lot of information on our website, fortifiedhome.org or disastersafety.org, and just thank you for being here.